a very troubling phenomenon that we continue to see. Former CIA Director John Brennan and former Obama aide Ben Rhodes both appearing on cable TV within like 2 or 3 hours of each other, basically calling for the intelligence community to hunt down and to look at, so-called domestic terror groups in what could lead to, I think, a terrible backlash. Let's take a listen to both of what they had to say in the last 24 hours.
Yes, there's a security issue. How do you identify armed militias who are intent on doing harm? But there's a broader societal issue that is going to take many years to detox the disinformation, the lies, the hate that has been spread. A whole segment of the American population has been radicalized by what has happened over the last 4 years and by the fact that Donald Trump is no longer there. They can no longer see Donald Trump kind of representing their grievances in the highest office. And so those grievances are going to go back underground. And I think there's a lot of work to be done to deal with the broader societal issues that go beyond what even national security, homeland security professionals could do.
So I know looking forward that the members of the Biden team who have been nominated or have been appointed are now moving in laser-like fashion to try to uncover as much as they can about what looks very similar to insurgency movements that we've seen overseas, where they germinate in different parts of the country and they gain strength, and it brings together an unholy alliance frequently of religious extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, even libertarians. And unfortunately, I think there has been this momentum that has been generated as a result of, unfortunately, the demagogic rhetoric of people that just departed government, but also those who continue in the halls of Congress.
This is completely insane, Krystal, and really troubling. John Brennan saying that they're already doing it, number one. But two, look at the rhetoric they're talking about. They are using insurgency rhetoric and comparing it to like Iraq. Now, first of all, we didn't really learn how to deal with insurgencies in Iraq, did we? You can ask the people of Syria and Afghanistan about that. But beyond, this is insane. They're talking about using the entire national security apparatus of the United States in order to target American citizens. And there's not one iota of elite pushback that I can detect in any of this. I cannot emphasize how dangerous it all is.
I completely agree. And this is something we've been warning about now for a long time, that the fact that Democrats and so much of mainstream media has uncritically embraced these security state ghouls as if they're resistance heroes creates in and of itself a very dangerous situation, because they've established Brennan as this like voice of credibility and this honest, trusted broker, this courageous, patriotic man. So when he speaks, the audience has really been trained to listen to him and really take in and trust what he is ultimately bringing you. He's saying we need to treat Americans the way that we treated ISIS, right? That's what he's saying. And look, I want to be really clear. Where there is violence planned, where there are real threats, that should absolutely be a priority in a way that it clearly was not before the Capitol insurrection, which easily could have been disrupted if they had just had proper planning and a little bit more manpower on the ground in anticipation of what, was a very likely event to anyone who was paying attention whatsoever. They have the tools that they need. They have more than the tools that they need. They have the laws that they need. They have more than the laws that they need. We already have gone too far in this direction, but yet people like this, the moment they see an opportunity, are always going to grab more power for their buddies and also more contracts for the military industrial complex from which many of them profit. Yeah. That's the direction that we're heading in here. And it's incredibly troubling because you see an openness to this from the Biden administration. You see an openness to this from, honestly, both sides of the aisle. You do have a little bit of progressive pushback from Rashida Tlaib and others who are saying, hey, hold on a second. We do not need to go in this direction. It's extraordinarily dangerous. That's encouraging to see, but far too little dissent from this direction that we seem to be inexorably on right now. And one more thing on this, just in terms of like actual assessment of the real threats that exist, not hyperbole, not, oh my God, Antifa's coming to your town. Oh my God, these militia movements are everywhere. yesterday, with the inauguration, when we had tens of thousands of National Guardsmen on the ground in DC, when a warning had gone out that every capital was potentially going to be under siege, there was next to nothing in the way of protests anywhere. In New York and California, two very large states, there was one protester, one guy who showed up, I think, at the state capitol in Albany in New York. That's it. Okay. There, by the numbers, was a much larger and more threatening militia and far-right movement in the 90s during the Clinton era than there is now. So that's not to say there is no threat, but all of this hyperbolic rhetoric ultimately always ends up in an ugly place.
Yeah, exactly. And look, you want to know how it goes further? Listen to what Brennan said. He didn't say, this is what they always do. He's not like white supremacists. He listed, he's like anarchists and libertarians. Like, what? He's like, even libertarian. And they can use this word to classify anyone. As Zed has said on the show, what's the most common use of the Patriot Act? It's against drug offenders. It has nothing to do with terrorism. They use their legal authorities and they expand it out over and over again. And they get exceptions and all these things written into their processes. None of it is accountable. None of it is transparent. And what happens? Which is, next thing you know, they have the most sophisticated domestic spy apparatus known to man. If you're an American citizen, you're basically, your rights, to the extent that you even have any, currently, are basically gone in terms of their ability to surveil you, to politically organize. I mean, that is what they are setting themselves up for. And sure, right now, are they going to disrupt like a counter protest or something like that? Maybe not. But if they build the infrastructure to do so, one day someone will come along and will use it in order to do exactly that. Take your group chat or whatever offline. Take your ability in order to organize coming. I think we're probably 2 to 3 years away from internet service providers, of which there's a massive monopoly, just canceling websites altogether, being like, no, you can no longer travel to this website. The very pipes of the internet themselves. And a lot of that will happen at the will of the government and the intelligence community, which we know from Snowden have been working together since 2012. So this is incredibly dangerous. You already see John Brennan using the new definition of domestic terrorism to basically include everyone who doesn't agree with the idea that John Brennan should be able to spy on you and do whatever he wants. And we're once again entering this phase, as we said, where it's only going to be dissident voices like us, maybe like Glenn Greenwald and a few others, who are saying anything. And the elite machine is just chugging along. And we're going to wake up in 10 years and say, where the hell do we live right now? This is crazy.
Right. When you have a population that hates and mistrusts each other, there are only two possible directions. One is authoritarianism, which is the direction that we're on, right? Mm-hmm. For all the people who were frightened of authoritarianism over the last 4 years, there was real justification, because now you have liberals calling for cheering censorship and cheering on and begging for more of a police state. Okay. That's how you actually get to authoritarian. That's the track we're on. When you have people who hate and mistrust each other as citizens so directly, you can either end up with basically a police state where you've got, the force of the state to keep everybody in check and keep everybody in line. Spend some time in DC this week if you want to know what that looks like. Or you can go in the other direction, rebuild trust, and actually devolve democracy, put power more in the hands of the people. Yeah. We're not headed in that direction right now. We're headed in the other way. And I think that is a deeply troubling trend.
Yeah, we're going to stay on top of it. We won't let this one die. But I'm afraid of where everything is going right now.
All right, we're going to have more rising for you after this.